So just recently, a Forbes article has come out talking about the Ripple versus the SEC case. Now, Forbes has been writing several articles about this topic for the past several months, and each article has been increasingly supportive of Ripple, or so it seems. Now, in it, they're not specifically talking about Ripple, but rather the lack of regulatory oversight and clarity. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the 4 points that this new article that Forbes just came out with said, and it is spot on. Also, Sam Bankman-Fried had some interesting things to say about Bitcoin recently. Sam Bankman-Fried is, of course, the billionaire owner of the FTX exchange. I'm going to tell you what he said about Bitcoin, what its use case is going to be in a few years, and what FTX just did regarding Bitcoin. Also, Do Kwon, the creator of Terra Luna, is in more crypto news because this time he has come out with a solution, or a proposed solution, as to how to fix that Terra Luna debacle and that $40 billion that was absolutely wiped out. So I'm going to tell you what his community is saying about this proposal and if it's actually going to happen. Also, we're going to talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C. regarding the cryptocurrency world. Ron Hammond of the Blockchain Association has a big update for us. So in this video, I'm going to review what they're talking about in Washington. Hey everyone, my name is Randy and welcome back to the Late Night Grind. Right now on this channel, we are of course talking about the Ripple versus the SEC case, but I'm also covering cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any or all these topics interest you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Late Night Grind community. Also, if you're feeling generous, I'd appreciate it if you do 3 things. Smash the thumbs up button, watch this video all the way to the end, and of course check out my Patreon, link in the description below. If you do that, I greatly appreciate it. Alright guys, let's jump into it. Yes, this is video number 2 on vacation mode, so again, I hope you can hear the audio. There is some wind and some waves behind me, but let's go. Okay, so first I wanted to talk about what they're talking about in Washington regarding cryptocurrencies and regulation. Ron Hammond of the Blockchain Association, which is actually a lobbying group for the cryptocurrency world, is giving an update. Now, his most recent update has to do with what they're talking about, and it involves stablecoins. He did mention that Janet Yellen and several others in these finance committees took note of the UST collapse. It did not pass them by. He said previously stablecoins were what is being talked about in Washington, revolving around regulation, but he said algorithmic stablecoins like UST really weren't part of their discussion. Well, that's all changed. UST has now put algorithmic stablecoins on the map. Now, of course, this week there's a bunch of talking points regarding stablecoins, CBDCs, UST, and several other things. And what Ron was mentioning is that right now it looks like the Democrats seem to be split on some of the issues revolving around regulation, specifically around stablecoins, especially when it comes to banks being the only ones able to issue a stablecoin. Now, if you're a crypto holder, that sounds exactly the opposite of what the cryptocurrency world supports, and you'd be right. On the other side, he said Republicans really aren't doing a whole lot because they know that, well, come the midterm elections in November, they're going to be taking control of the House of Representatives, and they're going to have control over the regulatory push in 2023. So he said right now the Republicans are not being super bipartisan because they know they're going to have control soon. But nonetheless, a $40 billion wipeout in the cryptocurrency world absolutely caught their attention, and that is going to be part of the stablecoin discussion come this fall. And speaking of UST, that algorithmic stablecoin that crashed last week and wiped out Terra Luna along with it, wiping out $40 billion worth of value. Well, Do Kwon, the creator of Terra Luna, has been in the works behind the scenes, attempting to come up with a solution to keep Terra Luna alive. Well, he's proposed something, and some of his community supports it and some of his community doesn't. Now, his solution is basically to make a fork of the Terra Luna blockchain. So basically, leave Terra Luna as it stands now, create a whole new blockchain, and call that one Terra Luna, and the one that is now currently standing, simply rename that one Terra Luna Classic, i.e. what Ethereum did after their hack several years ago. Now, there's a lot of technical aspects of this that I'm not going to go into, but basically about half of his community seems to be supporting it, and the other half does not. The other half of the community simply says, burn all of the diluted tokens that you created in an attempt to save Terra Luna and just get rid of them. Just burn them. But of course, there's issues with that as well. So we're going to see, I'm definitely following this story as it's going to be a major part of the cryptocurrency story going into fall. And of course, like I said, what Washington is talking about in terms of regulation. But at least we can see that right now, Do Kwon is still in the works and he didn't just go radio silent and vanish. Okay, and before I get into the Ripple versus the SEC case and what Forbes is saying about it, I wanted to mention real quick what Sam Bankman-Fried said about Bitcoin. Now, Sam Bankman-Fried, he's the billionaire 29-year-old owner of FTX Exchange, which is a new, very large exchange typically used by traders. And he made a comment about Bitcoin that was really interesting. He said that in 5 to 10 years, people are not going to be using Bitcoin for transactions. Now, he was mainly talking about the scalability of it, the speed of it, and that's not a big shock to those in the cryptocurrency world, as Bitcoin is not exactly scalable to have billions of transactions going on all the time. The blockchain simply wasn't built to handle that. However, what he did just announce is that the FTX exchange just began using the Lightning Network. What is the Lightning Network? Well, it's the layer 2 on top of Bitcoin that allows Bitcoin to scale on a transaction basis and make things a lot faster. So it's interesting, his comments went one way and then their actions went another by adding support for Lightning Network. Definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on. All right, so now let's talk about this Forbes article that just came out. This article was written by Rosalind Layton, which I've actually covered a few times on this channel. She's a Forbes contributor. She gets featured many times on the Forbes.com website. And this article that just hit today outlines a lot of these things about the Ripple versus the SEC case that myself and that a lot of other YouTubers, Twitter users, and XRP fans and holders have been talking about for a while. It doesn't specifically talk about how it's a fan of Ripple or thinks Ripple should win the case because of X, Y, or Z. But it does absolutely go after regulators and lawmakers in the United States for its total lack of clarity and lack of regulatory framework, and why it's turning this Ripple versus the SEC into the cryptocurrency case of the century. And so after reading the article, I agree almost 100% completely. It is 100% spot on. She mainly goes after, the lawmakers in 4 different points. So here's what she points out. The first problem with this case is that they can't actually define what a security is versus a cryptocurrency, because depending on what governmental agency you're talking to, there's going to be a different answer. Because FinCEN, who has already determined that XRP itself is a currency, it is not a security. However, the SEC thinks a little bit different. Point number 2, it actually goes after the dramatic overreach of what the SEC is actually doing in this case. And the fact that there is a regulatory vacuum in this space is what is allowing the SEC to essentially go after and use its extortion methods in going after entrepreneurs in the cryptocurrency space. And the third point was interesting because she points out that, are the US regulators actually protecting China or US retail investors? This is an interesting one. She pointed out that China has hundreds of firms in the United States that represents over $2.2 trillion worth of value that are listed on United States exchanges without any disclosures or audits, and they're still allowed to trade. How is that possible? And the fourth point, she goes after US lawmakers and regulators for its essential failing and lack of regulatory framework and putting the work in to actually get it done, because there's a lot of countries in this world that have absolutely nailed this and gotten this framework down, created frameworks, created rails for which cryptocurrency companies, blockchain companies to operate in. But the United States is making it political. They're doing a lot of backdoor deals, and as we know, if you've watched my channel for some time, we know that in this case specifically, while we're uncovering one of the craziest corruption scandals in history, known as ETHgate. So right now, the rest of the world is watching the United States, and they're failing to create a regulatory framework. And guess who is also watching? China. They're watching with great interest. All right, guys, so if you want to follow along with these stories or any of the other topics that I cover on this channel, make sure you subscribe to the Late Night Grind community. I really appreciate you watching all the way to the end, for smashing that thumbs up button. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.